ahead and call this meeting to order. And Mr. Coley, if you would mark all the commissioners as being present, please. Commissioners, as you recall, in past years, we've had members of the Leadership Development Program in attendance with us to observe the board meeting process. And over the next several months, we'll have participants from this year's class in attendance. I'd like to welcome the participants that are here with us this month. We're very happy to have you. And if you would please stand and introduce yourself, give us your name, which department you're with, and tell us how long you've been with KUB.
All right, I'm Brian Beeler. I've been with KUB for 29 years, all of it in overhead construction, and I'm supervisor over at the travel and maintenance section.
Mike Bowden, gas systems engineer, and I've been here 29 years as well. And I lead a group called Project Management and Operations Support.
Nathan Chesney, I've been here for 22 years, operations department and senior operator.
I'm Marcy Hedrick. I'm in the Human Resources Department. I've been at KUB for 8 years, and I'm the team lead of the compensation and HRIS team.
Jay Miller, 2.5 years, communications. I work on a lot of our digital platforms and marketing stuff.
Matthew Stennett. I've been here just over 4 years. I'm a team leader in the electrical systems engineering group with the planning and programs, and also project manager of the ADMS project.
Steve Watson, I've been with KUB for 6 years. I'm part of water systems engineering, and I oversee a group for wastewater planning and water and wastewater mapping.
Well, again, it's a pleasure to have you all with us, and thank you for your commitment to KUB and your commitment to the leadership program. The first item on our agenda is approval of the minutes from the September 19th meeting. Those were mailed to you. I'll take a motion for approval if there are no changes to the minutes.
So, second.
All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Our first official action for the board is consideration of the nominees for the commissioner term beginning January 1st, 2020. I'd like to recognize Commissioner Herbert for the nominating committee report.
This year's nominating process for the term beginning January 1, 2020 began in January of this year when the online application became available on KUB's website. The committee met in August and advertisements ran in the News Sentinel that month. We had a lot of great applicants, and the committee evaluated the applications and identified qualified applicants. The charter requires that the board provide the mayor at least 5 nominees for each commissioner vacancy. The nominating committee recommends the following 5 nominees: Kathy Hamilton, Kirk Huddleston, Jerome Miller, Don Parnell, and Tammy White.
All right, you've heard the recommendation of the nominating committee. I'd like to now ask Mark Walker, the board secretary, to distribute the ballots.
Commissioners, as a reminder, you do vote by written ballot, and when you have finished voting, please remember to sign your name at the bottom of the ballot. And of course, you may please select at least 5 candidates, and you may select from those nominated by or recommended by the nominating committee any other applicant, or you may write in a candidate if you wish. Chair Hamilton, the following individuals have received a majority of the votes, and it is Kathy Hamilton, Kirk Huddleston, Jerome Miller, Don Parnell, and Tammy White.
All right, these 5 names will be submitted to the mayor, who will select one to nominate to city council. I want to thank the nominating committee for all your work in conducting the process this year. Next on our agenda is resolution number 1402, a resolution authorizing and approving the sale of certain surplus real property of the electric division of the Knoxville Utilities Board, being part of KUB's 2-acre tract with frontage along Fairmont Boulevard and located adjacent to a parcel at 3308 Barton Street in Knoxville, Tennessee. Gabe?
Commissioners, KB has identified a small portion of a larger 2-acre parcel that has a small infringement, structural infringement, and we'd like to consider it for surplus. I'd like to introduce Michelle Wilson, Manager of Procurement, to give you details of that property.
Thank you, Mr. Bolus, and good afternoon, Commissioners. As Mr. Bolus shared, I'm here to provide you some additional information as you consider the Resolution 1402. Earlier this year, KUB was made aware of a structural encroachment in North Knoxville in very close proximity to one of our transmission towers. We approached the property owner at the adjacent parcel at 3308 Barton Street and worked with our electric systems engineering group to identify a small footprint of 933 square feet that we believe is not needed by that system or any other system for system maintenance or to replace existing infrastructure in the future. This is a map of the parcel. In yellow is the wider 2-acre tract. Fairmont Boulevard is in the section at the very top off the top of the map. The area in the red rectangle is the surplus area, which is to the rear of the adjacent parcel on Barton Street. The 50-foot area that we typically need for transmission system infrastructure, we would continue to maintain that, and that is indicated in the blue highlighted area shown on your map. That concludes my planned comments, and I'm available for any questions that you may have.
Any questions?
So we have a buyer?
We do. The property owner at 3308 Barton Street is in negotiations with us through legal representation.
So what would they be able to do? We're gonna sell the property. What will the property owner be able to do with it?
He has an existing structure on a concrete slab that was unpermitted with the city of Knoxville. And so this would allow him to keep that structure, which is now part of his home, without impeding our need for electric system maintenance or replacement of our existing infrastructure.
All right. We need a motion and a second on resolution 1402 on what will be first and final reading.
So moved.
Second.
Are there any members of the public that would like to comment on this resolution? If not, Mr. Coley, will you please call the roll?
Commissioner Askew.
Aye.
Commissioner Hamilton.
Aye.
Commissioner Herbert.
Aye.
Commissioner Pennell.
Aye.
Commissioner Simpson Brown.
Aye.
Commissioner Small.
Aye.
Commissioner Worden. Aye. Resolution 1402 is passed.
Thank you. All right, next on our agenda is resolution 1403, a resolution renaming the KUB Corporate Services and Conference Center in honor of Mintha E. Roach and her contributions to KUB and the Knoxville community. Okay?
Yes. Commissioners, it has been 1 year now since we said goodbye to our good friend Mintha Roach, and I couldn't find it a better fitting tribute to her and her service to our community and our employees as to recommend a naming of a building at Corporate Services at Hoskins Operations Center in her name. Resolution 1403 is a resolution that would name the building that we house our HR department, our training departments. And as you know, Mintha, that was part of her legacy and what she was all about was our employees. Every single employee that is hired and leaves KUB goes through that building. And so I recommend that we pass resolution 1403 that allows us to name that building the Mintha E. Roach Corporate Services and Community Conference Center. I don't want to make a formal name here. And I recommend that resolution for your all passage on the first and final reading.
All right, we will need a motion and a second on resolution 1403, and again, on first and final reading.
So moved.
Second.
Are there any members of the public who wish to comment on this resolution? All right, then, Mr. Coley, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Askew,
Aye.
Commissioner Hamilton,
Aye.
Commissioner Herbert,
Aye.
Commissioner Cannell,
Aye.
Commissioner Simpson Brown,
Aye.
Commissioner Small,
Aye.
Commissioner Worden. Aye. Resolution 1403 is passed.
All right, next up is the president's report.
Before we
Oh,
go
sorry.
on, how will we let Nicola know?
We
She's
are-
actually outside the door
No.
listening.
Yeah,
She has her name tagged.
We are actually doing a dedication on November the 8th for her. She's out of town right now as we speak, so we'll do it on November the 8th, the afternoon, do a dedication and a revealing, if you want to call it that, at the actual building. Thanks for asking. Commissioners, every fall, we update you on the natural gas industry, what's going on, as in anticipation of our winter peaks. We also want to make you aware of KUB's purchasing requirements when it comes to gas purchases. I want to recognize Sherry Ottinger, Manager of Rates and Analytical Services, for this year's update.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. As Mr. Bowles mentioned, I am here today to talk about a compliance update with resolution number 1387, which governs KUB's natural gas contracting activities. This is a presentation that we provide every year as that portion is required. We typically also will provide winter bill projections. We're going to do so again this year. But before we move into those two portions, I did want to just pause for a minute and talk about some of the industry trends that we see in the natural gas industry. So it seems that almost every month a new record is being set in the natural gas industry. We talked some last year about some of the reasons for that. As you know, shale gas has changed the scope of natural gas in the United States. So we are seeing the domestic production continues to rise. Some of these records that are being set are all-time records. Some are maybe the record for a particular month. We have also seen LNG exports increasing, and consumption is also increasing. And if you think about the number of companies across the nation who are making or increasing their commitment to cleaner sources of fuel, that is also lending to increased demand for natural gas. And under this environment of increased production, increased demand, we see more pipeline maintenance. So there are several reasons for that. If you think about the age of infrastructure, and we talk about infrastructure around here a lot from our own, but we also hear about pipelines, we hear about bridges and roads, and that's just the environment that our nation is in right now. We have aging infrastructure, and so that does create a need for greater maintenance. Also, this increased consumption that we're seeing means there's increased utilization on many of the pipelines, so that also lends to more maintenance, and then of course increasing regulations. So in years past, within my memory, gas supply would breathe a sigh of relief at the end of winter because the worst part of the year was over. You could kind of collect yourself, you could take on some special projects. Now what we see is when we get to the end of winter, maintenance season is starting. And that is actually more difficult for us to schedule deliveries during that time of year than it is during the high volume of winter. We also see that the maintenance season is a little bit more complicated because, again, I mentioned the power generation. So because of the hot summer months, power generation is pulling on those assets. It makes it difficult for pipelines to schedule their maintenance, so they're often looking to try and find those shoulder months. So that is a very important aspect of the industry now. Last year I also mentioned to you that there would be some rate cases at FERC. Due to the federal income tax cuts, and I know that seems like it's distant in our memory, but it took a while for FERC to put a plan together. But they did have all of the pipelines, all of the storage facilities were required to submit financial information to FERC as part, so they could review and assess whether their rates needed to change in response to the federal income tax cuts. So this was a massive undertaking at FERC.
It was quite complicated because some of those entities had not presented their rates to FERC for some time. So you had mixed in there with requests for rate increases, for increasing maintenance costs, those sorts of things. So it did take a while to work through that process. KUB did participate in some of those. Not every pipeline or entity that submitted information, it did not all result in a rate case. But KUB did participate in those. We are a member of the East Tennessee Group, which is a group of local distribution companies like ourselves that are on the East Tennessee Pipeline. And for the East Tennessee Pipeline, that group collectively represents about 22% of the throughput on the pipe. So where we have influence, we participate more heavily. On Tennessee Gas Pipeline, that group only represents about 1%. And so while we do stay abreast of that and comment when we need to, our participation does vary from case to case. So I'm glad to report, at this time, all of the pipelines and storage facilities that we have historically done business with and contracts with, FERC has completed the review of all of those. And so those FERC approved rates are now built into our rates. As you know, we have a purchase gas adjustment. So any increases or decreases, any change in rates flows through there. So I'm sure you're wondering, what is the number? We knew this would not be a windfall, but the best number that I can probably give you is it's about $300,000 to $400,000 per year. Again, we had some that were requesting rate increases. We pushed back on that. And then also these came in at different times. The rates were not all approved on a single date, so it was staggered as far as their implementation. But any savings, again, that we receive, we flow that through directly back to the customers. And then finally, regional supply pricing. The increased U.S. production has lowered prices nationwide, and we typically refer to prices based on the NYMEX, the financial markets. But certainly location is still very important to us, and that does come up from time to time, and I'll mention that with one of our supply contracts. So Resolution 1387, this is a slide that you have seen many times, so none of the volumes or parameters have changed on this. But within that resolution, the board did designate certain levels of authority to the CEO of KUB, and then the board retained certain levels. So for example, KUB staff could recommend to Mr. Bolus that we enter into a 5-year contract with the pipeline. He has authority to sign that. If we wanted to do a 10-year contract with the pipeline, we would have to bring that before the board. So this has been a very busy year for us with natural gas contracts. So I actually have 2 slides on those, and I'll go into those in just a minute. Before we leave this slide, I did want to tell you, though, that our sales of excess capacity did approach $500,000, again, in fiscal year 19. So it was approximately $487,000 that we are returning to our customers through our rates. This is just a quick snapshot of our gas supply portfolio. Just looking at storage, I wanted to let you know, heading into winter, we are exactly on track with where we need to be with storage. The green portion of the bar represents our available storage space. So for our LNG storage, we always want to be 100% full because we can only inject in the summer and we can only withdraw in the winter. But for the other 3 storages, we are able to inject and withdraw on any given day. You may notice that the last storage is all green, which means it's empty. That is because that is a new storage that we just contracted for. It will become available to us on November 1st. Okay, and so for the contracts that we signed this year, I will start out with the supply contracts. We did, since I spoke to you last year, we signed 2 contracts with CNX. One is a year-round contract. It's actually expiring this month. And then we also did a winter-only contract for this winter. CNX is located on the east end of the East Tennessee Natural Gas Pipeline. This is a very strategic location for us. And when I talked about regional pricing, this is an example. There's very limited supply directly connected to East Tennessee. So this does come at a premium. We are very strategic about purchasing this, but it is a great asset for us being located so close to our Saltville storage. During the past year, we also entered into 5 new base agreements. with suppliers or other entities. So if you remember the December pipeline event that we had, some of these are as a result of that. So when you see another LDC like Jefferson Cobb Utility District, that is not someone we're going to regularly purchase gas from, but in certain situations it is very beneficial for us to already have an agreement in place. And then we also did sign 2 asset management agreements during the past year. The savings that you see out there on that chart is part of that $487,000 of capacity release that I mentioned. And then moving on to pipeline and storage contract activity, again, a very busy year this year. Most of our pipeline and storage contracts are for 5 years, and so 2019 was very busy, just as 2014 was very busy for us. No surprise that we would renew our contract with East Tennessee, since that is the only pipeline to which we're directly connected. Our contract with TGP, we also renewed it. You may remember that 5 years ago, we were able to obtain a significant discount on TGP. It was $3.8 million. That saves our residential customers almost $2 per month. So I'm very happy to report to you that that discount is continuing on almost exactly the same terms as before. Our savings is $3.7 million per year this time around, but we are just very glad that that discount will continue for our customers. We also renewed our Bear Creek storage, which is our largest contract, and one of our 3 Saltville contracts was set to renew. I will also point to there are 2 new contracts on this chart. So under pipelines, the 3rd bullet, Texas Eastern, we have entered into a new contract with them. It's for a very small volume. We have never scheduled on this pipe. We have received gas from this pipe when a supplier dropped it off to us. But so we will be learning how things flow on this pipe as we move forward. And in connection to that, we also signed a new storage contract with Bobcat Storage, which is located on TETCO. We only did that for 1 year. While we are confident that we can move gas from the wellhead to the East Tennessee pipeline, we see potentially some challenges on moving gas from the wellhead into storage. So we thought it prudent to just do a 1-year contract there until we learn how things flow on this pipeline, and then assess and go from there.
I have a question.
Yes.
What is the reason for the discounted rates?
Pipelines are sometimes in competition with each other. And so anytime that we can have a discussion and ask for something less than the tariff rate, we do that. On East Tennessee, it's just not possible. The pipe is fully subscribed, and no one is willing to even give up capacity, so there are no discussions there about discounted rates. But on other pipes, there are. So for example, we could move some of our TGP volumes to TETCO and schedule on TETCO instead. So that's why they're in competition.
And a follow-up question, do you expect to do that, to pull a certain amount of volume on the TETCO contract to see how well that works?
I think it will be a learning experience, but again, we know others who use the same paths that we are using on TETCO and the same priority. On moving it to storage, we know others that are moving gas into storage on TETCO, but our priority is lower, our ranking. We don't have firm rights, and that's why we can be told it'll be fine, but we're going to test it out for ourselves. So, very good question. Just briefly on price risk management, again, prices have been very stable for many years. If we went back prior to this decade, you would see that $6 gas was probably the norm. But now for several years, we have been in an environment where we often see prices below $3. And the volatility has been very low. So as a result of that sustained reduction in volatility, our price risk committee did amend our hedge goal from 60% to 50% last year. And that's the volume that we have targeted to have price locked when we arrive at any given month. So I will say that that goal is somewhat of a soft target. It is more useful to us as a planning tool than as an after-the-fact metric, because if you think about weather influencing our purchases, but yet we're going to be targeting what we want based on normal conditions. So low prices are, of course, good news for customer bills. So I'm very glad to report to you that we expect winter bills this year to be very similar to last year for both gas and electric. I will point out to you, we are talking about winter bills, so this is for the period November to April. When we do our full year bill comparisons, you will see lower numbers for natural gas because obviously most of the consumption occurs in the winter months. Consumption is what drives bills. We know that, and we know that weather is the largest driver of consumption. So to that end, our projections are based on normal weather. Should we experience colder weather, then most of our customers would see higher bills. We are hearing that this winter might be slightly warmer than normal, but only time will tell on that. So weather is not, of course, the only factor that affects bills. Also, the characteristics of the home and individual habits can impact bills. And so to that end, KUB offers many programs and funding to help educate our customers and to provide short-term assistance, to provide long-term solutions. And I know you all are all familiar with these tools that we offer, but I did want to highlight one, which is our energy and water savings information. You may have heard about this already, but while KUB has for many years went out to the community and spoken to groups such as homeowners associations, we're now introducing a KUB-hosted workshop. And this will be beneficial because if you think about a homeowners association, we are certainly glad to still go to those, but sometimes we may be one item on their agenda for their meeting. This workshop will enable us to provide an hour or more of discussion on just KUB energy saving tips, water saving tips. So you have seen some of the demonstrations here in recent months in board meeting. We do have a workshop planned for the end of this month. It's at the Public Works Service Center. That room will hold about 65 people. The workshop is free, and not only is it free, but participants will receive a kit valued at $40. So we were hoping that there would be interest in this, and as of yesterday morning, we had more than 65 people signed up for this workshop. So we're very excited to see that level of interest in the community, and we do expect this to be the first of many workshops that we offer. So with that, I'll be glad to take any questions.
So a question and then maybe a comment for Gabe or the team here. So the question is, when you talked about maintenance issues nationwide, talk about where we are. This may not be your question, but talk about where we are in terms of our pipelines and redundancy and stability in terms of being able to provide service.
Do you mean KUB's distribution system?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, and I may touch on that in my presentation just a bit, on the resiliency of our distribution system.
Okay.
Immediately after.
All right, you're next.
Yeah,
and
you
so,
can ask if I don't cover it. Darrell covered his presentation. If it doesn't, we'll make sure he does.
And this is not a KUB issue or something that we need to solve, we will be able to solve, but as we think about, I love the fact that we're doing a whole lot of education and really using our customer care counselors in the way that we've been using them. But more and more what I've seen in people that I've talked to and people that I've worked through is they have issues with their bills when it's not necessarily a KUB issue, but they are renting basically substandard housing. Right, and so I know that we can't address that as an organization, but I would love to maybe bring some people to the table to help talk about some of these issues. Because many times the issues that, the few issues that I've worked through, when we came to the end of it, it was because they are renters and they're, I don't want to call them slumlords, but in some respects that's how they are. They don't feel the need to fix it up. And the prices is at a point where they say, hey, I can't find anything cheaper than this, and so they got the low cost housing, which doesn't make it pretty advantageous in terms of utilities. And so I wonder if we could just have some conversations with people, either from Code, City, KCDC, to just talk about process in terms of referring folks if they're in substandard housing, that they may be able to have access to other opportunities, whether it's to move if they're renters, or other things like that. So Gabe, I don't know if, who would handle that from us. but I
Well, that'd
think
be
that-
something I would talk to the city, obviously first, and city and county, because you got both, you know, even though we talk a lot about the city, it's, our system's pretty large.
Right.
We do hear that a lot, we've heard that a lot lately. I'll
Right.
say that's been a theme I've heard in the last few months that was, it's getting, the drum beat's getting louder.
Right.
Because these workshops will help, no doubt, but these are small fixes compared to some of the major issues that are going on. If they have, you know, no insulation in a home, this isn't gonna do a whole lot. It's gonna do a little bit, but not gonna fix the problem.
And of course, the landlord is saying, we can fix it, but we're gonna have to raise the rates,
Yeah.
so that, raise the rental rates, and so the resident ends up losing either way.
Either way, right.
Right.
So,
But I wonder if
but
there-
there's gotta be a bigger conversation in the city,
Yeah.
and especially in the city, from the people I deal with,
Right.
about how do we create more affordable housing that is not so substandard.
And of course, we heard from one of our speakers, public speakers last month, that was the exact issue that she was trying to help people that they were dealing with. And at least one of the things it seems would be that perhaps by ordinance, the city could require a disclosure of what the utility costs have been. Because the worst thing, I think, is for a renter to move in and to have no idea, and they think they can afford to live there, and then they get their first month's utility bill, especially if they're in the winter months, and they realize what they've signed up for. So, you know, at least disclosure might be a good first step, but you're right, we'll have to work
Yeah,
with
and with the
city
new
council.
mayor, with a new mayor and 4 new council folks coming on board next month, I mean, when they start, I guess, technically at the end of December, but that'll, you know, I've heard those mayoral candidates say affordable housing, those type of things. So there'll be an engagement to be had, is my point to that. And that'll be part of what I do to have that conversation with them.
And I think it's critical that we hone our message, because we are the low-hanging fruit. The first option has already been, you need to lower your rates. And it costs X amount to run the system. So if we lower it on one, we're gonna raise it on somebody else. I mean, there's a thin margin. So more education we can do on the front end to help them understand the issue's really not with us. We have very competitive rates. The issue is with the owners of the homes.
Okay, thank you, Sherry. And segue perfectly, as you know, the board has been a leader in letting us allow us to do Century 2, both in just the infrastructure programs that we've done and the funding for those programs. Darwin Haga will be presenting Century 2 for all 4 utilities, the product we've made, the progress we've made the last 10 years. And then next month we'll do more of the financial update of the next few years. This kind of sets the table for that discussion next month.
Thank you, Mr. Bellis. Commissioners, we have been working on Century 2 for quite some time now.
Or century.
For it seems like decades. And honestly, you all have been a major part of it. And I'm looking across the front row, and these folks here on the front row have also been a great part of it as well. And I didn't expect to see who I saw here today, so it's good to see them here. But I do today, I want to reflect on all the work we've all done. And I want to talk about some improvements and the upgrades we've made and the progress we've made over the time that we started on Century 2. When we started out and we embarked on Century 2, we set some internal goals. We really wanted to focus on renewing and replacing aging infrastructure. Obviously, that was a priority. We also wanted to make sure we maximize the life of our assets. We wanted to use data. We wanted to use that knowledge and make sure we worked on continuous improvement as we looked at the assets. So, we really wanted to make sure we were doing the right work on the right asset at the right time for the right amount of money. Kind of simply put. I'm going to take you back in time. Not all the board was here. In fact, none of the board was here back in 2004. But you all have heard all about 2004 when we entered into our PACE 10 program for our wastewater system. Shortly thereafter, in 2005, the consent decree took place for our wastewater system from the Environmental Protection Agency. So in 2006, we started wondering, can we create a program similar to PACE 10 for the rest of our utilities? So we ultimately called that Century 2 for all of our other utilities. And so we're ready to roll, ready to launch our Century 2 program in 2007. The recession hits. So we put everything on pause, pretty much. We had some programs we were able to continue with, but we put that program on pause. And then in 2011, as you can see, the board endorsed a 10-year Century 2 funding plan for our electric and our water systems. And then in 2013 for our gas and our wastewater systems. Finally, in 2014 and 2017, the board endorsed and adopted 3-year rates for all of our utilities for Century 2. So we've been working on Century 2 throughout. I'm going to start with our electric system, provide an update and remind you all kind of what the progress we've made there. For our electric system, we have over 200,000 customers. We have nearly 5,400 miles of wire. About 20% of that is underground, and most of those are in subdivisions. We have 9 in-feed stations and 63 substations, and lots of assets in our electric system, as it's our largest. Overall, we've been replacing poles at about 2% per year. That's been our pace. And we put a particular focus on our transmission poles, our 69 kV poles. And you can see the progress we've made. The median age in 2008 was 51 years of age. The poles were old. They were rotting. In 2019, the median age is 15 years. So a lot of progress on those transmission poles. We've installed 2 new in-feed stations and 2 new substations. And we've modernized to some shape, form, or fashion 2/3 of the rest of our substations in our system. Our transmission lines, 45% of them have been replaced. And as you are aware, we're putting in fiber on pretty much all those transmission line routes. So a lot of progress in our transmission lines. And our poles, overall, we've replaced over 20,000 poles throughout our system in Century 2. And we continue to evaluate and examine and adjust. And as you can see, we've made an adjustment to our poles as we continue to evaluate the data through inspections. 82% of our underground cable has been replaced, and that's supposed to be complete by 2023. We've also invested in our downtown network. We've upgraded all of the 107 vaults that we have downtown. We put in 5 new vaults as well. And about half the switchgear has been replaced, and about 15% of the primary conductor. So in all, $402 million has been invested in our electric system since fiscal year 12. And we've gotten positive results as a result of that Century 2 program and all our investments. The dark black dotted line, the thick one, is the actual trend line on this chart, and it reveals a 25% improvement in reliability throughout that since fiscal year 06. Now, fiscal year 19 is not where we wanted it to be, and I'm going to talk on that just for a second. Last year, we know we had a lot of rain, we know we had some flooding, and we think it obviously had an impact on our system from an electric standpoint as well. But what we do know is that 61% of the outages last year was related to vegetation. On a normal year, it's about 50%. And 2/3 of that vegetation was outside of the trim zone. So the photo to the right is an example of how a tree falls from way outside our trim zone and causes an outage. So it's a head scratcher. How do you prevent those from occurring? Yesterday, Brian, we were talking a second ago, and Nate, we had another one. It was actually 25 feet outside of our trim zone, the base of the tree, and it fell into our lines. So we're continuing to evaluate and examine to see what kind of improvements and opportunities we can do to continue to look at vegetation and our other tools to see how we can make sure we're improving reliability. We are also receiving industry recognition. We are an RP3 provider. We've mentioned that to you in the past. We're actually at the diamond level. Again, that's the highest level designation. We've applied for that twice. We've received it twice. So, in fact, I think one year, Liz, we got a perfect score on that. And we're also Treeline USA designated utility. One thing I want to note is in a recent survey of our customers, we received a 90% score of reliability stating that we were either good or excellent. So obviously Century 2 is paying off on our customers' reliability. Moving on to our natural gas system.
Before you go to gas, Darwin, how are we on the implementation of the smart meters?
Well underway. We're putting about $1 million into place strategically. Arnie? I'm sorry, the meters. I'm sorry, I'm thinking of the smart switches. Sorry. We are going to be complete this year. When our final year of implementation of those meters.
Do you find that the implementation of those meters has affected the reliability numbers?
No, actually we don't. We already have, actually, it gives us quicker information to us, but we still have to respond. So we really haven't seen a difference in how quick we can respond. We got notified pretty quickly anyways. What we're hoping is it will help us more quickly define where specifically the outage might be occurring. That's where we're hoping, but we're not there yet. We are investing, as Matthew mentioned, into an automated data management system, distribution management system, excuse me. Sorry, Matthew. And he's heading that project up, but we're hoping that will provide us a lot more data from all the data that's coming in to help us pinpoint it even more. But so far, we don't have that system in place.
Well, I know as a customer, I think that, I don't know if you all have looked at the advanced meter data. Gabe knows that I'm a great fan of that.
Yay.
Invariably, it's down when I go to look at it, and that's an aggravation, I know. But, you know, it's really amazing, the information that you're able to yield from that, and, you know, I think it's a great tool for our customers.
Well, once we have, honestly, it's a lot of data that comes in as well. And so this system will allow us to be able to assimilate that data and use that for information purposes.
Smart meters, they were optional for
They are encouraged. We have not enforced, and so we have less than a 1% rate of customers that have said, I don't want it.
Okay, that was my next question.
So that's where we are. But I will say the smart switches, which I thought you were going to ask, we're investing about $1 million a year in smart switches. Again, trying to use data and trying to figure out where the trees are falling to figure out where we can maximize the benefit from those investments.
Back to Tony's earlier point too, on rental properties, it's not the residents that get to choose. It's the owner that gets to choose whether to put in a smart meter.
That's, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. Okay. Eddie, answer your question.
Yeah, the landlord should make the decision. Sometimes their tenants, in some situations, believe that they're not the best thing based on some information they may have seen on the internet, and can put pressure on the landlord not to put those in. Those have been very few and far between. The number is actually about 0.3% that we have that have opted out of the smart meters, against a nationwide average of about 3%. So we're just 1/10 of the nationwide average of people who have opted out. So we are very pleased that less than 1,000 people out of the 320-some thousand that have been installed so far have opted out. So we're feeling good about that.
That's good. Thank you.
And you're right, it's a great tool for energy consumption alone. The gas system. We have over 100,000 customers in our gas system. We have over 2,400 miles of pipeline, and we have 3 gate stations, and that's where we receive the gas from our pipeline. And then we also have 49 regulator stations. Commissioner Small, I'll mention the red lines on our system here is kind of the backbone of our system. And that's our higher pressure steel mains. As you can see, it kind of provides us quite a bit of resiliency for our system. And I think that's probably what you were referring to in your question earlier. And in a bit, I'm going to mention something about this line right here, another resiliency pipeline that we provided, and I'll talk about that also during our Century 2 program. We installed that. So
I don't know what Tyler was asking. What my interest in that question was more, less
pipeline.
resiliency inside our system as getting the gas to the system.
Yeah, okay, this is within the system, right, and your question is getting it
Do
to
we have
us.
redundancy in any way if we, under any circumstance, can't get it in one way, can we get it in another, like we do with the water?
I will say, and I'll let somebody else help answer it.
For
Yeah.
the East Tennessee natural gas issue, like we had to, go down to Chattanooga, we had to go down to Chattanooga and then bring it back up if we had to, so.
And we've got some northern opportunities, we've got storage, I'm looking at Mike Baldwin or Trace, or Sherry.
Yeah, unfortunately, the East Tennessee Natural Gas Pipeline is the only pipeline to which we are connected. So we do rely on it. We do benefit from the fact we are in the center of it. It has a north line, a south line, and then it has a line coming from Appalachia, and we are in the middle of all three of those. So that is very beneficial to us. But as far as the pipeline itself, it's the only one.
And thus the circumstances.
Similar to TVA, we cannot take energy from any other power producer other than TVA. So and it's a geographic situation.
Thank you.
And as you're aware, we had the situation last year where we were, because we do have one.
But then again, that's the reason for some of the increased storage contracts, so
And
that
some
we
of
can.
the other smaller contracts that
Right.
we've signed since last year.
Right.
That's good. Thank you.
So our natural gas system is definitely our newest system in general. It's been basically a highly regulated industry for many years. And so as you can see, in 2005, we already had 85% newer pipe types way back when. Today, we have 92% newer pipe types. The older pipe types, I'll point out here, is cast iron and ductile iron, and the other one is the lower pressure steel pipe that's in our system. As you can see, in our cast iron ductile iron, we're almost complete. There's 2 roadway projects that will allow us to eliminate that pipeline out of our system. That's the Alcoa Highway project, and then the Broadway Viaduct project that's about to go underway. And once that's done, we'll be out of that business from the cast iron ductile iron perspective. This is, again, internal to our distribution system. We have system resiliency once it gets to the gate stations. And I pointed out on the south loop line, coming from the south, we had a new pipeline, which is a higher pressure steel pipeline that was installed, and that's a photo of it being installed basically along Alcoa Highway from the south. And what that provided us is more resiliency to our system. It also allowed the University of Tennessee to eliminate their smokestack, buy more gas from us, and obviously reduce their carbon footprint. So a win-win for a lot of people in that project. So for our gas system, we spent and invested nearly $150 million in our Century 2 program since fiscal year 12. And I mentioned that it's highly regulated. Our maintenance program and then our inspection programs, here's a listing of some of them. They're all very highly regulated as well. The photo to the right, you've seen similar pictures of this. This is the Segway where we have the gas leak detection equipment installed on that and provides us some efficiencies. And with our gas system, likewise, we're also recognized in the industry. The American Public Gas Association has designated us as a SOAR utility and a leader in operational achievement. So again, benefits of a Century 2 program. Any questions before I move on from gas? We have nearly 80,000 customers in our water system. We have 1 treatment plant. We've talked about that in the past. We'll talk some more about that in a minute. 24 pump stations, 28 storage facilities, and we have 1,400 miles of pipeline in our system. And our replacement's on track. We've been replacing about 1% of our pipeline per year. We focused on the pipes with the higher break frequencies than the other pipes. So again, try to use data. And as you can see, in 2006, we were half and half older, half newer pipe types. Today, we sit at 63% newer pipe types. And again, older pipe types are listed here, the galvanized pipes and the cast iron and cement pipes. The galvanized pipe, as you can see, of this is the highest leak rates of any pipe type we've got. We've got 34 miles left in our system, and by 2023, we'll be eliminating that out of our system. We've already replaced 90 miles of the cast iron and cement since those. For our single water plant, we did invest in Century 2 projects as well. Here's a listing of some of those. The first one I'll mention is the low service pump station. That's where we draw the water from the river, we bring it into the plant, and we treat the water. That pump station was installed in 2014 for about $11 million. And as you're aware, the board has endorsed a water resiliency plan to have a second treatment train for our single water treatment process, for our single water plant. It's a 15-year program. As you can see, phase 1 is complete with the green check mark. Phase 2, the 3 new generators, the first bulleted item there is in construction. And the final 4 bulleted items under phase 2 is in design as we speak. So we're well underway on the resiliency for our plant. We've installed 3 new storage tanks. We've replaced or upgraded 35% of our pump stations, and we have invested over $170 million in our water system since fiscal year 12. And this was amazing to me when we pulled this chart together. This is the older pipe types we talked about, the galvanized cast iron and cement, and this was our highest break frequency, right, for these type of older pipes. As we've eliminated those pipes, the number of repairs has been cut basically in half from these older pipe types as we reduce the amount in our system since fiscal year 6. So pretty good drastic reduction. And not only are we recognized in the industry, we're also recognized by TDEC by their inspections. Most recently, we received a 99.8% score. We're very proud of that. I think you've heard in the past, we got a perfect score in the past. We've got 100% scores in the past. 99.8%, we're proud of that as well. So I also want to brag on the Water Quality Lab. They received perfect scores on their last 2 inspections that they had, and they happen to be certified for more tests than any other public water system in the state. So we're proud of the lab. Yes?
How big is our system compared to, with 80,000 customers? How do the size of ours compared to, surrounding region? Is it a medium, small?
We are the largest.
You're the largest.
By far, particularly, for our water system, we're quite a bit larger than any of them around us from a customer standpoint. Geographically, we're also larger. We have the East Knox County portion as well that we purchased in, 1978. Yeah. So that gives us a lot more opportunity for growth for our water system and our wastewater system.
Derwin, can you explain how the water resiliency it works? I know we talked about water redundancy, and we've kind of backed away from that. And can you explain? Obviously, this is a big financial commitment. How, what's the goal there with the resiliency program?
The goal is to have an absolutely second train of treatment and not have to rely on the other one. Since we do have a single water treatment plant, we've gotten away from the word redundancy because redundancy sounds like we're just wasting money, right? To be honest with you. So we say resiliency. Okay. But it's what we're doing is we have one treatment plant with a treatment train to treat the water and get it back into the distribution system. We're doing the exact duplication of effort, kind of close to the same one, but we will be able to rely on either train of treatment and still get water to the community from, in essence, one treatment plant, but not really one treatment plant.
So it'll have a separate intake?
We're looking at what options we have available to us, yes. Okay. Absolutely. So everything should be redundant when this is all said and done. Every pipe, electrical, everything, we're looking for redundancy.
So potentially you could shut down one and service the other one and vice versa.
Exactly. Now I will say, we're not sizing it at, the current plant is sized at 60 million gallons, okay? That's well above our normal routine. We're looking at what we call catastrophic or failure from a treatment train. We are looking at, I think it's 38 million gallons, which is a pretty good amount of treatment, but we're looking at our resiliency being at 38 million gallons, which should be able to provide most of every day in a normal water system, absent a major fire of some sort.
Great, thank you.
Sure. So for our wastewater system, we've got over 71,000 customers, 4 treatment plants, 70 pump stations, 1,300 miles of collection main, and we have 34 million gallons of storage. And our rehab's on track. We have upgraded 30% of our system since 2005, and as you can see, in 2005, we had 70% of our system older pipe types. So in 2019, we sit at about 60% newer pipe types in our collection system for our wastewater system. So our pipe and rehab's on track. We're looking at about 2% per year. And we have 6 storage tanks, and as you recall, those 6 storage tanks are all new since the consent decree. And that provided us with 34 million gallons of storage in our system. 3/4 of our pump station has been upgraded, and then the remainder's in the long-range plan. This one's an artist rendering of our Jones Street pump station, which is to be constructed. We have one over there now. We're going to put it at a little bit different location, but it's on the other side of the river, across from Calhoun's on the river, and it's somewhere in the tank farm area you're familiar with. And there's a couple of wastewater projects that I'll just bring to your attention. We've invested quite a bit of dollars in Century 2 and wastewater, but I picked these two because it's cool to say biologically enhanced high rate clarification, so I wanted to say that. But Fourth Creek, we've invested $28 million on that project, and it was completed in 2018. And as you all are aware, our final consent decree project is underway as we speak at Kauai, and it's the largest project in the history of KUB at $50 million. And we've invested over $700 million in the wastewater system since fiscal year '04. I want to brag on this one. I'm proud that all the consent decrees deadlines have been met to date. In fact, the budget of $650 million on track. The final project ahead of schedule, not on schedule, but ahead of schedule. Let's knock on wood. And we've had 54 plant operational awards in that past 15 years. And on top of that, Dennis Sayre with the Environmental Protection Agency, one of our regulators, one that had us under the consent decree, right, has made positive comments and mentioned that we've shown tremendous progress. So the Century 2 work is paying off, and we're getting recognition for that. So commissioners, we have continued to focus on continuous improvement, trying to use data, and again, trying to make sure we're performing the right work on the right asset at the right time for the right amount of money. You know, that's pretty much what it's all about. But I really honestly can't say enough that without the board's commitment and leadership and support, none of this could have really been possible. And that's been noticed. Mayor Rehara, as well as Moody's rating report, has both mentioned positively about our strategic long-term plan for our asset management programs. So I've got one more slide, but I'm going to stop here and see if there's any more questions. Okay. This is our Century 2 discussion timeline. As you can see, we've got, as of today, we've got the second one checked off. The rest of these are board meetings where there's going to be a lot of excitement around financials and rates and the budget. And so this is several months ahead.
You said that without even bursting into
It's because
a lot of excitement.
I'm excited, so I just thought y'all would be. And culminated in June of 2020. So that's our plan ahead. Are there any questions? Thank you.
So Dave,
Yes.
what's the process? So we'll be out of the consent decree in 2021, is that correct?
That's correct.
And so what's the process from there? Will we have a final meeting with them and formally report on this project?
The answer is I'm hopeful that we can get out from under the consent decree. We're one of the first utilities in the country to actually get to their deadline. So we're new, this will be uncharted territory. My hopes are, well, we're going to actually submit paperwork saying we're done.
Right.
The intent is we're out from under it and commit to the Century 2 going forward, so they don't think we're on a slide, and get out from under it. We will learn over the next year. In fact, we've got that discussion going on about what do we start preparing for, because there is no template or model out there other than just saying we are completely finished with what we said we did. Here's the data, here's the information, here's our commitment going forward, and learn from that. You know, I wish I knew the answer, but my goal is to get released from that and then just maintain the system going forward. Yes. But I will definitely be keeping you all in the loop on that, because like I said, it would be a process for us included. Commissioners, members of our customer support and key accounts departments recently attended an eSource Account Management Leadership Council meeting, in which we received an award for the best utility for the 2019 large customer service delivery. I'd like to recognize Tiffany Martin, our Director of Customer Service, to talk more about that.
Thank you, Mr. Boland. Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm going to be really brief. I just wanted to talk about the award. As Mr. Boland stated, we recently were visiting Denver to receive this reward. You'll see pictured here our manager of key accounts and customer support, and one of our key account representatives, Rodney Eads. The key account representatives actually serve as a one-point contact for our larger commercial and industrial customers. And so really that's where we've received this recognition. eSource is a Denver-based company that does market research as well as consulting for the utility space, specific to customers. And so they administered a survey nationwide. 14 utilities participated in that survey, us included, as well as some of our peers that you guys will recognize. Nashville Electric Service and Memphis Light Gas and Water also participated. The results of that survey were good, very good for us. We were actually rated the top utility in that survey, receiving a 9.3 out of a 10-point scale for overall customer satisfaction for our large business customers. So we're very proud of that. That survey also provided insights for customers when they're looking at utilities, what things they want to see as important attributes of that utility. So those three things for this year's survey were reliability, which Mr. Haggins talked a lot about today, proactive notification or communication throughout the process with an outage, as well as trustworthiness. And so we scored well in all of those categories. For reliability, we scored a 9.4 out of 10, and for trustworthiness and for communication, we scored a 9.5. So we're very pleased with this recognition. I just want to echo Mr. Haggard's comments about really that comes from your commitment to Century 2. If we weren't able to do those programs, we weren't able to provide quality service to our customers, and they recognize that. That's important to them. As well as just the commitment to hire a skilled workforce. We count a lot on the folks to interact with these large customers, build relationships with them. And so we appreciate the time that they spend with those customers, and honestly, just the relationship we have with those larger commercial customers. So we wanted to make you guys aware. We're pleased to be recognized. Any questions?
Well, speaking of recognition, I just want to say congratulations on Knoxville Business Journal's 40 under 40. What a great honor for you. So congratulations on that.
I'm definitely honored. It's definitely honored to be nominated and selected. So thank you. Appreciate it.
Great job.
I have a question about this.
Sure.
So these awards, we are able to show potential customers these awards and give them kind of trust and proof of how we work and how reliable we are. How else are these used? Are they used for Moody's ratings, or, I mean, as far as they look at financial, but then they look at, other factors? Who else looks at this stuff and says, great job?
Well, certainly with respect to the rating agencies, whenever we issue bonds and have a rating review, we provide a complete overview of the organization. So, for example, on the RP3 for electric reliability, we talk about that, the SOAR for gas, the various awards for water and wastewater, and the plant performance and system performance, and even awards such as this, or community awards, some of the more, I guess, noteworthy ones we will mention to them as well. We want to give them a sense of the whole well-roundedness of the organization and the overall management of the organization. So.
Great.
And are the 14 utilities all in Tennessee?
They're not.
Okay.
Actually, number 2 and number 3 Florida Power and Light, so Florida. And then Public Service Gas and Energy, which is based in the northeastern states, so New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, they serve that area. So it was really a nationwide survey. They're not just Tennessee utilities. And some public owned and some investor owned. So a mix of those. I will also say that we use that information because obviously you're not always perfect. We use that information to improve our services to customers. So we take that survey data. If there's some things that we see as a trend, we try to implement programs to make our experience with the customer better.
Great.
This is also extremely helpful in economic development as well as recruitment.
Yeah.
Well, and congratulations to you also, because it's those people that deal with the customer that immediately set the tone. So thank you for everything you do in that.
Thank you. We've got a great group.
All right, moving on, we will now hear from members of the public who would like to address the board. Our procedures allow for guests to have up to 5 minutes to make your comments. And there is a light on the podium. When there's 1 minute remaining, the yellow light on the podium timer will go on. And when your time is up, the red light will go on. The first individual that has signed up to speak is John Brock from Smithville.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Thank you for this opportunity to address the board this afternoon. I'm John Brock. I represent Smith Built Homes. They're a local home builder. 2 representatives are here today. We are constructing a neighborhood in off Millertown Pike, known as Ely Park, and an issue has arisen with KUB that Mr. Coley and I have spoken about over this past week. I would like to just bring it to the attention of the board, and if there's any way that this board can help resolve this issue, then we would certainly welcome that today. We are under construction of a home on lot 37. This home is already under contract to be sold to a buyer who himself has contracted to sell his home. We are nearing completion of this construction project. However, KUB line crews have put a stop to construction because they say that we are too close to KUB transmission lines. We have learned that these are 69 kilovolt transmission lines. There's no dispute that we are not within the TVA or the KUB easement area. What we're being told is that National Electrical Safety Code clearance requirements, horizontal and vertical clearance requirements, require that we be further from these lines than we currently are. Mr. Coley is an excellent person and an excellent lawyer, but we disagree about this. We are outside the easement area, and yet we're being told that we're still too close to the wires. We think that KUB erred in placing these 69 kV lines on this easement because it's a 20-foot easement. All the guidance for the NESC that I can find is recommending a minimal right-of-way width of 75 to 100 feet. We heard earlier today in your consideration of Resolution 1402 that KUB's normal right-of-way width is 50 feet. That is still much larger than the 20 feet easement area that we're talking about here. If it had been on a 50-foot easement area, then we would not be having this problem. The solution that we've been provided with is to pay KUB to raise the pole 10 feet, or actually replace the pole by a pole that's 10 feet larger, at an estimated cost of $24,000. These are not mansions being built, so that's a significant cost on top of the cost to build this home that we would have to incur. As I mentioned, we're close to the end of our construction, so timing is of the essence, and we feel there's some undue pressure on us now to resolve this matter. We think by saying that even though we're outside the easement area, we need to be an additional number of feet away from the transmission lines, effectively is a broadening of your right-of-way that you have not paid for. We have not been compensated for an easement beyond 20 feet. We think the insult to injury is then asking us to pay for the resolution. So that is the issue that we've been discussing, that we're in disagreement over, and I would welcome any questions or suggestions that this council may have.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next on our list is Stephen Smith.
The letter I'll share with y'all, pass around, that we're, should be a copy there for everyone. Well, good afternoon, and thanks for, I know as always, I stand between you and lunch, so I'll try to be brief. So what I wanted to talk about, hopefully this is an easy one, but we'll see, is as many of you know, the Tennessee Valley Authority is strongly encouraging their local power companies, of which KUB is one, to enter into long-term 20-year contracts. And they've set into motion a number of incentives and other things like that. And we are here to ask you not to change your contract format, to stay with the same contract that you have. And in the letter we lay out, I'm not going to read the letter verbatim, but I'll give you sort of the high points of it. The first thing is that we've been here before, and this is sort of, hopefully for the local power companies, it's not a collective amnesia moment, but, and I'll date myself a little bit here, because I remember when I first started doing this work, sitting with Larry Fleming here at KUB, talking about contracts and the frustrations that he had with that, and he told me very clearly that he had a pre-drafted notice to withdraw from TVA sitting in the safe. He was very proud of that. But I don't think he ever pulled the trigger on it, but he was very proud of having that. But over time, because of TVA's lack of responsiveness, a number of the LPCs basically shortened and encouraged TVA to shorten those contracts, and that's in the configuration that you're in now. And we think that's appropriate because it keeps TVA on a little bit of a shorter leash, makes them a little bit more responsive to the LPC community. And so we think that that is the appropriate dynamic to have. But a couple of really important points about the contract is we believe that it'll actually tie not only your hands as the existing commissioners sitting here, or board members, and the staff, but you're also, if you enter into a 20-year contract, you're going to lock the hands of people who are yet to serve in your positions. And we believe that that would be a very unfortunate situation. And as you know, the electric utility industry right now is in a very dynamic period of flux. There's a lot of things happening, and a lot of the power is moving from central station generation down to the distribution network. And so distribution companies like KUB actually have a lot more power than they've ever had, and that is only going to increase with time. And you don't want to prematurely give up that increasing power to an entity like TVA without, really serious negotiations. And what TVA's put on the table, in my opinion, is not worth what y'all are going to give up in your ability to have more power as the industry continues to evolve. Also, they're giving you very, very little in return for signing this contract. There is a financial incentive to do it, but it's a little bit of bribery, to be honest with you, but it's really not that great. We talk about that a little bit in the letter. But probably the most important thing is that TVA is on track now to destroy all their commitment to doing solar for customers, solar power for customers below about 10 megawatts or larger utility scale programs. They're doing away with generation partners or the Green Power Providers program. They've done away with distributed solar solutions. And the only thing that they're really offering now are these larger things. And they talk about some contract flexibility, but it's ill-defined. And they want you to sign on the dotted line before they define what that means. And so as both the city begins to set more aggressive climate goals and begins to look at, which is a big issue in this mayoral election, there's been a lot of discussion about this, it's only going to intensify, you're giving up your ability to have that flexibility to use this generation technology on your system. And we think that would be premature to do. And we think it's actually going to end up putting you in conflict with some of the goals that the city is hopefully going to accelerate with some of their new commitments to climate. And it's going to end up forcing people to ignore KUB altogether and just go completely behind the meter and not have to do a direct interaction. So I reached out to Gabe, wanted to talk to him about it. We haven't been able to sit down and talk about it, but I would hope that you will not sign this contract. 131 other utilities in the TVA system have, but the big ones, the majority of the big ones with one exception, have not. And as MLG&W Memphis is looking to potentially leave the TVA system, I learned yesterday that Volunteer Electric, now the big co-op just west of us, is thinking about leaving the TVA system. This is a very dynamic time that you all do not want to, I think, prematurely sign that contract. I have a question that I'd like to get answered. I know my time's up. I don't know how you're going to make the decision about what to do with the contract, and I don't know if somebody can either answer that now or catch me afterwards and explain to me. Is the board involved in that decision about whether you sign that contract? But it's a huge decision that not only affects us in the present, but affects us going forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, following the adjournment of this meeting, the board will have a lunch session across the hall that is open for the public to observe. This meeting is now adjourned.